So it begins. Donald Trump with Liberation Day, one day after, the aftermath of the world. Everyone is reeling. When I mean by everyone, I mean absolutely everyone in the world. Now, China has stepped up because China, believe it or not, is one of America's largest trading partners next to Canada as well as Mexico. And they've come out with some retaliatory tariffs themselves because, in a very bold response to President Trump's recent tariff impositions, China has officially fired back to the United States over President Trump's revived tariff campaign in a very strategic move, as both bold and very strategizing how China has attacked this, because China has imposed a 34% retaliatory tariff on all U.S. goods, effective immediately. Now, this isn't just some political stunt. This is what you call economic warfare, and the markets feel it, and they're showing it today because the markets felt it instantaneously. They absolutely dropped because the U.S. stock futures tanked. The S&P 500 futures plunged 3.4%. The Dow Jones fell 3.2%. The NASDAQ dropped a harsh 3.8%. And it wasn't just these indexes. Big names like Tesla, of course, when Elon Musk with Doge, that was already dropping. Amazon and Apple saw major hits as well, with investors dumping shares left and right out of fear of a drawn-out economic battle. Now, if you guys know anything about the stock market, when Blacklogic used to be Financial Literacy 101, where I used to teach you guys how to invest and save and budget and those things. You know, anytime there's a massive sell-off of stocks, that you guys should be absolutely buying the dip. That is how you make your money. You buy the dip because the stock market, time and time again, has always bounced back. Now, there's a bit of advice that I've taken upon from Warren Buffett himself. He stated, the difference between people who do well, and I'm paraphrasing, he didn't say this exactly, but I'm paraphrasing to put it in context. The transfer of wealth when it comes to the stock market is from people who are patient versus people who are impatient, meaning the impatient ones are not willing to wait till the dip bounce back up. They want to sell off and then maybe move their money to other indexes, other funds, other stocks, etc. But being patient and holding your stock and buying the dip, that's where the riches come in. So that's my little bit of advice by the way of Warren Buffett, okay? Now, this is more of a tit for tat for China playing chess. This is what they're trying to do, because Beijing really didn't stop at the tariffs. They're also restricting exports of rare earth minerals, a resource critical to everything from electric vehicles to smartphones to military tech. And they slapped new sanctions on 27 U.S. companies while blocking poultry imports from several American processing plants. So again, they are restricting themselves of U.S. imports to again, using this as a bargaining chip for America to come back to the table and renegotiate our tariff percentages, and of course, making China more profitable. Now, in short, this is a coordinated blow. This is what China is trying to do. They're trying to entice, they're trying to fearmonger, they're trying to wage their negotiations in order for the U.S. to do what they've always done, take the back seat. Now, if the U.S. doesn't respond with a strategy and caution, this thing could spiral into a trade war that makes 2018 looks like a slap boxing match, where you guys just stand there and they get slapped and they see if their brain shakes and they get knocked out, or they can gather themselves up and then slap the other guy, which I just wouldn't do. Your brain has been shook. You might have some internal damage. You might have some CTE issues after that. But that's what's going on right now when it comes to that. But this week's Friday night bombshell, General Timothy Hart, the top man in charge of both the NSA and the U.S. Cyber Command, was suddenly fired by President Trump. And the reason may even be more jaw-dropping than the action itself, because the firing came right after Laura Loomer, far-right political activist and Laura Trump supporter, allegedly told the president that Ha and other top national security officials weren't sufficiently loyal to his agenda. A major shakeup at the highest levels of the U.S. intelligence over loyal politics. Are they building a regime? Is this slowly becoming a dictatorship? I'm asking questions that some people are probably just thinking. Now, me personally, I don't know. But again, when there's smoke, there's fire. But it doesn't always mean that it's going to be a forest fire or it's going to be very destructive. Again, it can be extinguished very early here. Now, this is no low-level bureaucrat. Hall was responsible for safeguarding our country's cyber infrastructure and leading the nation's top surveillance agencies. He's the guy watching the Russian bots, Chinese hackers, and the Iranian cyber cells, and yet he's gone just like that. The fallout has been swift, and of course, the Democrats in Congress are outraged. Even some in conservative intelligence circles are warning that this sets a very dangerous precedent, removing officials not for the performance, but for the personal allegiance. So is this going to be similar to what happened in Donald Trump's 45th presidency? Or is this just a bump in the road, so to speak, and they'll be quickly replaced and we won't see any mass firings? That's the question I have for you guys, because as I said before, you can set your watch now because Friday night in DC have become the prime time for purging government officials. And no, this isn't what you guys would like to believe, a conspiracy theory, but it's a pattern, because every week as dust falls on the Capitol, someone gets the pink slip. Low profile, sure. Calculated, maybe. It's called news dumping. When political controversy firings are done at the end of the week after the news cycle winds down and reporters log off, it's been happening across all agencies, whether it be Homeland Security, Department of Defense, and even the State Department, because many of those fired have served under previous administration and were seen as institutionalists, the exact kind of people Trump world doesn't really trust, because they've been in place for very long and they have done anything to disrupt or change or modify the things that have been working in government. So the only question is, who's next? And the message is just sending to the public servants trying to keep the government running. And they showed this picture here of this older lady here who seems to be single. I don't see a ring on her left hand. She's here with a dog and a cat. She seems to be very sad or maybe stressed, because maybe she's one of the people that got fired. They state that her name is Mary Glantz, former senior advisor at the U.S. Institute of Peace Center for Russia and Europe, who is one of hundreds of federal employees fired via email late on Friday night. So again, they're painting the picture that the Trump administration is just firing people at will. Okay, that's what essentially is going on right here. Now, I came across this story here, and I just thought it was intriguing, because this is the so-called formula behind Trump's new tariffs, because it's just not about hitting enemies or helping American workers. It's math, and flawed math at that. And here's how the White House reportedly determines the tariff levels. They use a trade deficit with a given country and impose a reciprocal tariff to level the playing field. Sounds fair, right? But now the method ignores key factors, in my opinion, like trade and service, foreign investment, and global supply chains. Worse, it penalized countries with whom we actually have positive or complex trade relationships. Now, for example, many developing nations and export low margin goods, but still face sky high tariffs because their goods trade balances look skewed. Meanwhile, wealthy nations who import and export services don't face the same treatment. Okay. So as I'm looking at this very complex, in my opinion, because I'm not math savvy, none the least. Okay. I'm probably a CB student in math. I'm just keeping it real. I was just kind of trying to comb through this. A country's total export to the US, a country's total, and they're using X and I's means this. And they stated down here in plain language, reciprocal tariff equals trade deficit and imports divided by trade deficit. Okay. Then they have a whole breakdown. Let me blow this up for you guys. It states the big picture. Once you fight your way through the thicket of the Greek letters, the formula is really simple. As they say that the formula is very, very simple. I do not believe that, because as we look at this, the amount any country tariff will rise is equal to our trade deficit with the country divided by our total imports from the country with a global floor of 10%. And then they also stated something down here about Chat GPT, how you can just throw this into Chat GPT. Let me see if I can find that for you guys. Because it states here, as it happens, you can ask Chat GPT the best way to calculate a tariff on another country to get the balance of trade to zero. It comes up with the exact formula. So what I did, I went over to Chat GPT and I threw that very same equation in, and I don't get the same thing. I don't get the same thing. I don't get the same thing at all. Because as you can tell here, they've broken it down very comprehensively. And they break down the equation for you to understand, but I don't see the same equation as I break through this, okay? And of course, you mathematicians out there, you guys who were great in algebra and trigonometry and calculus and all those things, you know how to E equals M times 1 plus T equal, exponent, etc. And again, I'm not gonna just bore you with these complicated, in my opinion, okay? It may not be complicated for you because each letter may represent a number. And that I that you see in this formula here represents any country, okay? Because they kind of broke it down here. They were stating that how the letter I represents any country. They said on the left-hand side, this means that. On the right-hand side, it means this, and yada, yada, yada. And so there's different versions of Chat GPT, okay? Chat GPT 01. So I said, maybe I got the wrong version of Chat GPT to give me that same equation. Again, let me let you see this equation. They said you can just pop this in Chat GPT and it will show you. Okay. So I went into Chat GPT and it didn't give me that equation. So maybe they use a different version. So I went to another version. This is the 1.001 version and this is the 4.0 version. So I went here and I'm getting these numbers. I still don't get that equation, okay? And they breaking it down for you and I can understand. They were saying how if this country imports 200 billion, exports 100 billion, the elasticity negative 1.5 assumes moderate sensitivity to price changes. Plug into the formula, bloop, blop, blam, and blam. Tariffs equal 59%. And then they go on and give some more information regarding that. So again, I absolutely have no idea what they're referring to when they're talking about you're going to pop this equation inside of Chat GPT. It just seems at some point it's a bunch of hogwash. Not the tariffs on the country, but the equation that they have presented. If you basically tell the American people that they have been charging us 90%, and now we've only been charging them 2.5%, and now you're going to raise their tariffs to 34%. Basic, we understand that. And now I know there's a lot of things happening behind the curtain, okay? But a lot of times the release of information from news agencies just is confusing people. This is going to confuse most people. Okay, most people have an 8th grade math level, and that's okay because a lot of us, we don't even use math like we used to do. I have a calculator. We're here on my desk. Most of us have calculators and advanced formulas and applications on our phone that can do the math for us. So again, most people are not going to understand this, but again, don't get me wrong. Americans are very intelligent. We know math. Just as well as other people from other countries, because they like to say a certain demographic or a certain race of people knows more. But no, again, when you look at all the advanced technologies, a lot of the innovations and inventions, where did they originally come from? Don't get me wrong. Inventions happen across the world, but I want you to look at some of the most innovative and technological advanced technology and where that derived from, okay? But nonetheless, I digress, okay? But again, I popped this into Chat GPT a couple of times and didn't get that equation. So with that being said, I'm just going to move on because who knows what version they had. But as we look at these countries, and again, the numbers don't lie because Trump's tariffs are hammering U.S. trade partners and not just the ones you expect. The European Union is facing new tariffs highs as 20% and Japan sitting at 24%. But here's where it gets alarming because development countries in Southeast Asia and Africa are seeing tariff climb past 40%. That's not just bad policy. That's economic devastation for countries already dealing with war, famine, and disaster. And that's something to think about because in Myanmar, particularly the city of Mandalay, businesses are already collapsing under the strain. Entire supply chains are being disrupted, and many countries are now considering retaliation or forming new trade alliances that cut out the U.S. together. And I stated just this the other day that a lot of these countries may just do business with each other and cut the United States out of America. Now, many economists, as I was reading, Forbes and other business economy websites, they were stating that America is too big of a consumer to cut out totally. But that doesn't mean that it won't hurt us. It doesn't mean that our products won't increase in price. It doesn't mean that gas won't decrease. Gas may stay at $3, $4, $5, depending on where you live. But countries are considering basically how can they cut out America and still make profit? Because analysts are warning that these aggressive moves may backfire, which is going to isolate America economically and hurt the very workers Trump is trying to protect. And I guess the way I look at this, I wonder, is this a long-term strategy that will benefit Americans? Because I stated there's going to be some bumps in the roads. There are going to be some penny pinching that we may have to do. But again, I know a lot of question is if we have to go through this because Trump has already put these tariffs in place, how long are we going to go through this? And how many millions of Americans will be affected? And how many of millions of America will be able to bounce back? Because again, people may have to go into their retirement funds, savings funds, 401ks, sell off investments, just try to suffice to pay their bills or buy groceries, et cetera, et cetera. So again, as we look at a lot of these reciprocal tariffs here, Thailand, 36, South Africa, 30%, Cambodia, 49%, Vietnam, 46%. So a lot of these East Asian countries that are already, I'll say they don't have a strong GDP, they're at 40, 30, higher, upper 30 and 40%. Israel, 17%. But listen, again, either we are supporting Israel, we're supporting Ukraine. Trump has imposed these tariffs on every country that have imports and exports that's dealing with America. And the lowest that he has went is 10%. And you see the European Union at 20%. So again, these are very, very reciprocal tariffs, and these are not discriminatory. Okay. He looked at the amount of tariffs that America's paying to those countries, came up with the equation, and imposed reciprocal tariffs. So I'll keep you guys updated. You new to Blacklogic, please hit the subscribe bell as well. Please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you are notified every time I release a video or go live. Thank you very much. Now, finally, a chilling new report for the European health researchers shows that the richest Americans have a lower life expectancy than the poorest Europeans. Let that sink in. The richest of Americans have a shorter life expectancy than the poorest Europeans. And we're talking about people in the top income brackets with access to private doctors, organic food, gym memberships, and yet they're dying younger than the poor folks in places like Spain and France. And I know a lot of people are just asking why, and I've said it many, many times before. I believe it's the food, but there's a other couple of reasons that stand out. We have a broken U.S. healthcare system that prioritizes profit over prevention. We have high stress, long work hours, and little vacation. Americans work more so than any other country in the world. We work long hours and we kind of beat our chest. We're hardworking Americans. It's not healthy for us. All these other countries, like especially in Europe, they have tea time and tea and biscuits or whatever, and they can take naps during the day. I want you guys to imagine you in your cubicle, you're at your desk, you're even at home working remotely, and you're trying to take a snooze, just a 20-minute nap. Maybe you just ate a sandwich and some chips, had a drink, maybe you had a salad, whatever it may be, right? And you're at your cubicle, you're at your desk, you're in your office, you're just trying to take a nap. Someone come knocking on the door. Someone knocking on your cubicle like, excuse me, oh, you asleep? You was like, yeah, what's going on? Like, you don't want to say yes and then go back to sleep because it could be rude. And you know how corporate America is or office work is. And then now you're awake, so you can't even get proper rest. You can't even take a middle of the middle of the day nap. And this is part of our culture, and it's been killing us. It's been killing us. So it could be a lack of rest and relaxation, a lack of vacation, stress, long work hours. We don't have universal health care, which again, that's debatable. I don't know if I'm on board or off board, but again, being the richest, most powerful country in the world, if you have a job, you should have health care, my opinion. And public safety nets altogether. We have a culture obsession with overwork. We do. I know people like, yeah, I work 60 hours this week. And we're like, oh man, you put in some work this week. We almost encourage people to work long hours. When we hear someone, oh, I work 30 hours. Oh, I guess you didn't do a full work week. We don't even think about the repercussions of their health, the stress, the job that they're doing, what they were doing in that 30 hours. We don't even value that. We just like 30 hours. Oh man, I work 55 hours. I work 60 hours. We don't promote wellness. And it's really a brutal reminder that money doesn't protect you from systematic failures. Even if you're rich in America, you're not the same from a healthcare system in decline or vacation, the time that you need to recuperate, to digress, to lower your anxiety levels, to lower your stress levels, to give your mind, body, soul, and spirit a break from being around people or an environment, okay, that may be harmful for you, not physical that you can see, but internally. So it's not just our healthcare system. It's not just the amount of stress of working long hours. It's not just a lack of vacation or PTO or leave days. A big contributor too is the food. Anytime you guys are just reading, I wish I had something up here, your food, something that you believe that doesn't have, processing or chemicals in, you can pick up a pack of Slim Jims. It just won't see dehydrated beef, dehydrated goat or dehydrated bison, whatever. Like you trying to eat some beef jerky, right? Or some turkey jerky. And you put the back on and you just think you're going to see dehydrated beef or dehydrated turkey. No. It has all these preservatives and added and sugar and salt and sugar and sugar. I read this book called Fat Chance by Robert L. Lustig. That's actually a good book called Fat Chance. And it tells you about all different forms of sugar and how it operates in your body. And basically sugar is more harmful than even cocaine. But I'll leave you guys with that. But I do have something that I want to break down for you guys. And I'm going to let this sister right here really break this down for you. And I think this, guys, will be very exciting and very informative. Listen in.
followed by Carolina Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Council. When I first announced my run for Congress, I had this random white woman, liberal, walk up to me and ask, well, what about you isn't Democrat? To which I responded, well, besides my skin color, what about me is Democrat? And it was at that very moment that she realized that God gave her enough common sense to ask me about my values. Now, don't get me wrong, I was raised to vote Democrat down the ballot, so when I first started, I would say things like, I'm a Republican, but I'm not a conservative. But now I know all too well I am a full-fledged, hardcore conservative, and I'm proud of it. I mean, my favorite saying is I was born black, not Democrat. But in all seriousness, whenever I began to think for myself politically, the choice was easy. I mean, why would I want to belong to a party whose mission is to infringe on the Second Amendment as if a criminal would ever participate in something like a mandatory buyback? Why would I want to belong to and endorse a godless party? Because there is no such thing, and I mean no such thing as a trans child. We have confused children and sick enabling adults. Why would I want to belong to a party that takes pride in shedding innocent blood? Number one, as if that's not what God hates. Number two, as if there's not a black market for baby organs. And number three, as if abortion clinics didn't start in the hood. Because if you think Trump is bad, you should research exactly who Margaret Sanger was. But speaking of the black community, why would I want to belong to a party who's responsible for the foundation of the Triple K? But it's not just that. Supposedly in the 1900s, the party switched, right? But what never changed, what I noticed never changed, is Democrats' love for immigration, how they have always prioritized that over the black community. I mean, imagine every single Democrat leader helping you joke about what a black job is in 2024, exposing your ignorance on 1924 and how imperative the Immigration Act of that year was, how it was all reversed in 1965 with the Hart-Celler Act, how Congress refuses the advice of the Rockefeller Commission and the Hesburgh Commission, and how to this day they refuse to adopt the Barbara Jordan Blueprint, validating every single thing that Dr. Claude Anderson spoke of generally, but specifically what Mrs. King spoke of in 1991 with her letter to Congress. Now look, I'm not saying that the Republican Party is perfect. No, nobody's perfect. What I'm saying is I saw with Malcolm X when he said that the liberals were the worst thing that could ever happen to the Western Hemisphere, but y'all ignore that, just like how y'all ignore LBJ saying, and I quote, I'm going to have Negroes voting Democrat for the next 200 years, and by God, 60 years later, I see no sign of recourse, but rest assured your vote is your voice, even if it is a whisper. Thank you, Council. Mayor